screen and get started as soon as you're ready.
All right. I'll put that in my email. Mhm. Sorry, guys. Somebody needs to mute. Please, can you mute?
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll
I'll do
just go
that.
ahead and say, if you guys would, please go ahead and mute unless you are speaking. You are welcome to use chat to pose a question along the way if you would like to do so.
Sorry, my screen is not interested in doing the right thing right now. Hold on.
Just hit the bottom right, the little,
No, I did, and it did presenter view, but it had it flipped.
I know, well, yeah, do that, and then now in the top right, display settings, top left, excuse me.
Thank you.
Um,
Technology, y'all. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you hopping on for the Drive Electric USA 2 Priority Area Success Stories webinar. Today, we're just going to give everybody a chance to kind of showcase some of the work that they've been doing in this project, highlight some of the strengths in their states as well, and just tell everybody a little bit more about their initiatives. A little bit of background on the project. This is a partnership across 12 states and the District of Columbia to develop statewide branded EV initiatives in states across the country. We began this program in 2020 with DUSA 1, and we got some additional funding in 2022, I believe, to start this in 2023. And we are less than 3 months left in this iteration of it, but we have had just some great partnership between Clean Cities and Communities coalitions, electric utilities, state agencies, non-government organizations, as well as a few different nonprofit organizations helping us lead some efforts this go around. So there are 7 main priority areas of work that this project focused on that you'll be hearing about today. And those areas are building statewide branded initiatives, consumer education and chapter development, engaging electric utilities and regulators, develop EV charging infrastructure plans with communities, educating state and local government officials, dealer engagement, and engaging fleets. This is just an example of some of the work that's been done across both iterations of the program with electric utilities. This map is available on our website if anyone is interested in it. You can see there's a lot of different legends up here. I'm not going to read them all for you, but you can check that out as you see fit. Another example of some of the chapter development that's gone on throughout the project. Again, a little bit of a key based on chapters that were created through this initiative, chapters that were strengthened through this initiative, and ones that are kind of starting to emerge a little bit more that maybe aren't quite yet to the created state. And this is just a map of all of the states that have participated in both Drive Electric USA 1 and 2 so far. And this is just a shameless plug on our end. If you have any state initiative videos that have been put together, we would love to showcase them on the Drive Electric USA website. Currently, we have 4 total. Maine, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Georgia have ones up there. Go check them out if you would like. And if you have any that you would like for us to include, please send them to us or send us the YouTube link and we'll go from there. With that, we will go ahead and get things started. Caroline, you are up first to tell us about Drive Electric New Jersey.
Just a
Thanks so
quick
much,
note,
Ken.
I mean, just Caroline or anybody, say flip or whatever else you want to for us to move slides. And for all the presenters, with 30 seconds left in your time, you will hear the word Rivian coming from me. That means you're close to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today. My name is Caroline McCallum. I'm the director of the New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition, and I'm happy to share a little bit about our work on Drive Electric New Jersey for Priority Area 1, which was developing a statewide initiative. But to start, I'll share a little bit about New Jersey. We're known as the Garden State. People love us for our beaches, our diners, and our casinos. And our capital is Trenton. The state was incorporated in 1787, making us the 3rd state in the nation. New Jersey is a relatively small and densely populated state with more than 9 million residents and 6.3 million vehicles on the road. There are also a couple of uniquely New Jersey dynamics that are worth mentioning. We're one of only 2 states where drivers still pump their own gas. Historically, New Jersey had one of the lowest gasoline taxes in the country. And ironically, New Jersey EV owners now face one of the highest annual EV registration fees in the nation. As of June 2026, we have approximately 273,000 plug-in electric vehicles and 271,000 hybrid electric vehicles registered in the state. Next slide, please. New Jersey has ambitious electrification goals, along with programs and incentives to help reach these goals, as outlined on these 2 documents. We saw Drive Electric New Jersey's role as helping to amplify those statewide goals and resources with organizations that already have credibility and established relationships within their own communities. This became the foundation of our priority area work. Rather than simply creating another statewide EV campaign, we wanted to leverage the network of organizations that were already reaching the various communities within the state and help the state accelerate towards these goals. And rather than asking every partner to participate in exactly the same way, we wanted to support what each organization already did well and build from there. Next slide, please. So this slide really represents the heart of the work. We began with a kickoff meeting that brought the full group together around the overall objective. And from there, we held individual and regularly occurring meetings with partner organizations to navigate the evolving EV landscape in the state and find areas where we could support the work already being done. Based on these conversations, we found support areas that played to each organization's strength and unique audience. And the work included identifying speakers, providing venue, conducting outreach, recruiting vehicles, identifying sponsors, developing educational content, and helping with on-site engagement. We also worked together on resources that could extend beyond a single event. One example was the ebook we developed collaboratively with the Sierra Club, which we used as giveaways when tabling together at conferences and other events. Those opportunities help introduce Drive Electric New Jersey to new audiences while also strengthening relationships among the partner organizations themselves. So what started as individual meetings really became a coordinated network. And that individual partner network is what ultimately produced the webinars, workshops, showcases, trainings, and show and tell events you'll see on the next slide. And this really is, the payoff from that process. Each of these activities grew out of the individual conversations and relationships we had been building with the organizations. By taking the time to understand each organization individually, we were able to develop a broader and more diverse EV education network, expand the reach of the partners, and create programs that those organizations had a real stake in carrying forward. And that's all I have. It takes a village. That's right. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Caroline. We appreciate that and your time today. And next up, we have John from Drive Electric Arizona. John, you might be on mute.
Next slide. So how can a grassroots EV education organization engage across cultures in a way that builds trust, reflects community priorities, and supports long-term adoption? We learned quickly that engaging with Arizona's native communities begins with trust. That is why we show up listening, not advocating. We meet people where trust already exists, in tribal departments, schools, community gatherings, and Earth Day events. We ask practical questions about transportation costs, charging, and long-distance travel. Then we allow those answers to shape our work. Our first effort taught us an important lesson. Even strong branding and well-planned events will struggle if the right community relationships and communication channels are not already in place. A breakthrough came in September 2024 when Maricopa County Clean Cities invited us to speak with the Intertribal Council of Arizona. That connection led to an invitation from the San Carlos Apache tribe to hold a 2-day showcase and ride and drive at the tribe's April 2025 Earth Day celebration. The events generated strong interest and helped establish a foundation for continued collaboration. 3 months later, we launched the Spirit of Arizona project. We'll flip the new slide. Yeah. Tying traditional native stewardship values to renewable energy, electric vehicles, and youth education. The wrapped Rivian's indigenous symbols reflect that approach. The eagle represents vision and leadership, the horse, freedom and movement, the rattlesnake, awareness and deep listening, and the butterfly, change and renewal. The concept resonated and opened doors to further collaboration. In February, we launched the Drive Electric Native Nations chapter. 2 months later, our ride and drive at the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community's Earth Day celebration reached nearly 1,100 people and provided 97 rides and drives, a success which has led to invitations for additional fleet, staff, and community events with the tribe. And last week, we were awarded an IREC Charging Smart Regional Engagement Partner Grant to help four Native nations pursue Charging Smart Bronze, establishing a foundation for long-term EV and charging planning for each of 4 tribes: Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, Gila River San Carlos Apache, and Tohono O'odham. Next slide. The development of our Route 66 Kingman chapter followed many of the same principles. In both Native nations and rural Route 66 communities, you succeed by showing respect, listening first, and allowing the community to lead. In Phoenix, scale often comes from the size of the audience. In Kingman, scale comes from trust, relationships, and local credibility. Route 66 communities have a strong sense of place, history, and identity. In Native nations, where culture and sovereignty and community values are deeply rooted in the land, people can tell immediately whether an organization is doing a program to them or building something with them. Historic Route 66 runs directly through Kingman, past the Arizona Route 66 Museum, Route 66 Electric Vehicle Museum, the only museum of its kind in the world. But creating the chapter was more than a logistical decision. It was a relationship decision. The chapter provides a local home base led by local voices and shaped by local priorities, including long driving distances, Route 66 tourism, strong EV charging availability, and the realities of rural life. As with Native nations, the goal is not to hold one successful event and leave. The goal is to create durable, community-owned leadership so that EV education and participation can grow organically.
Rivian.
The annual historic Route 66 Fun Run, an important Kingman community event, has been held 37 years running, primarily blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Next slide. These experiences taught us several important lessons. First, lead with relationships, not messaging. Chapter development works best when trust and community connection come before educational content. Second, find internal champions early. Our strongest progress occurred when respected local leaders became directly involved. Third, make education culturally rooted and intergenerational. Spirit of Arizona project connected electric transportation with stewardship, culture, storytelling, and youth education. That helped transform EV adoption from a technology story to a community value story. Fourth, design for growth from the beginning. A student workbook can become a digital content, an app, animation, and beyond. And as the formats transform, the community's culture integrity remains central. Finally, recognize that what works in Phoenix may not work in Kingman or within the Native nation. Statewide organizations can provide resources and support, but local communities must shape the message, the priorities, and the leadership. The central lesson is simple. Lasting adoption does not begin when an organization brings technology into a community. It begins when the community sees itself reflected in the work. Wow, I got it all in. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next up, we do have Alicia with Wyoming, and sincere apologies, everyone. My Teams doesn't seem to understand that turning off notifications and closing out of the program means I don't want that to pop up all the time. So I'm very sorry that that's happening. I don't know how to fix it. Alicia, I'm going to turn it over to you and hope that that does not continue to happen.
I didn't notice. So,
Okay, well,
okay. So, hi everyone. Alicia Cox, Executive Director of Yellowstone Teton Clean Cities, and leading Drive Electric Wyoming. A little bit of what about Wyoming. We are one of the least populated states, and there's about 500,000 individuals in our state. We have small communities and long distances between each of these communities, and we do have one of the highest ratios of charging infrastructure to registered EV. That is probably to do with low EV registration, but it's still an interesting stat. Okay, next slide. So I am also talking about priority area 2, create local chapters to educate consumers through grassroots education initiatives, called this Volt and Views. And yeah, we are very, very low in population. So we initially we kicked off with a meeting about trying to recruit folks for Drive Electric chapters. So we had a presentation about what a Drive Electric chapter would do. And this is just like a screenshot of that, but we had a whole presentation to recruit folks. And through that presentation in Teton County, we had a couple champions within our community that I think Rhode Island does have more people. We had a few champions that stepped up and became co-chair with the Teton County EV owners group. And then Fremont County had a champion as well, who eventually became a board member. And yeah, you can go to the next slide. So you can see that we have pretty established ones in Teton County, Fremont County, and then we have some emerging chapters, works in progress in some other areas, especially Idaho Falls. Actually, I know it's another state, but it's like just over the pass from us. It's just it's closer to go to there for me than it is to many places in Wyoming. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we had our initial EV owners group invitation, a meeting and presentation, recruited leaders, and then as well as just participants. And then from there, particularly in Teton County, we helped lead a lot of EV owner group meetups. Some of these were just pretty casual, and we kind of played with when we were offering them, if it was just a lunchtime or if we did like an evening at the brew pub. Basically to kind of share information about being an EV owner in rural Wyoming, and get EV owners up to speed on some of the things happening in the state, and then to also plan for a lot of the education and outreach events. So deciding on what events that we would like to do, what things that we're excited about. And so I think I want to stay on this slide. Yeah, so from there we did a lot of different types of education and outreach events. 4th of July parades were pretty fun for some of our members as well as my family. And then we also are fortunate, similar to the Arizona group, that we have a F-150 Lightning that we use for our EV experience program. So this allows folks to borrow the F-150 for their work week or their weekend, and they're able to see how it works in their daily life. So we were able to bring that as well as EV owners EVs to events. So you can see that we would use it at farmers markets, and we'd help power events such as a large scale event here in Jackson called Old Bill's Fun Run. And then our Fremont County chapter would do EV outreach at a highly attended car show. And then we joined forces for an event at a dealership in Riverton, Wyoming. So as a Teton County EV owners group, we brought over some EVs, and then the Fremont County EV owners also had some of their vehicles on display as we did a ribbon cutting for a charging station that they had there. And another thing that we did is some EV ambassador training, because one of the main somebody in Wyoming is most likely going to purchase an EV if they know somebody else who owns an EV, whether that's a friend or just somebody they've talked to. So these EV owner groups and the education and outreach that we do around this is very vital and very important. And actually putting these slides together reminded me that we haven't done an EV ambassador training in a while, and I'm going to do that again soon because it's helping give these EV owners a little bit more confidence and talking points. Obviously, they can share their own experience, but just giving that nudge and that there's this organization and group encouraging them to do that sort of work, and it's highly valuable in our state. So next slide. Yeah, so an outcome is we had increased awareness and confidence in EV ownership and use in Wyoming. So a lot of I liked how you mentioned meeting folks where they are. And so some of our events too is just like we had an EV showcase right on the main stretch of road in Jackson, and we used this like really well-known marquee. And so this was up for a while to just be highly visible and go where we will hopefully be seen more. And then we've been to like the fairgrounds with an EV showcase, and then here we are in Teton Village, and that's my son and I up in that little tent above the Rivian. But we're pretty outdoorsy place as well, so kind of making sure we're catering to that vibe. And yeah, that is all that I have. So thank you very much.
Perfect background on that photo too. It took me a minute to realize like
Mhm.
there's just mountains with snow on them in the background. No biggie. Thank you very much, Alicia. We appreciate that.
Yep.
Next up, we have Jeffrey with Drive Electric Michigan.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks also, Alicia. I love getting passed the baton from another Michigander. And so you can see from the great slide here a lot about our state. Just fun stuff like cherries up in Traverse City, to our amazing environmental, wildlife, our waters, Mackinac Bridge, Lighthouse. And at the core of it, and very much related to this project, cars in the Motor City, the birthplace of kind of automation and vehicle manufacturing in the United States. And I'm really excited to talk about how this connects to our statewide program here in Michigan. And then our slogan, Wolverine State. But for my one Demi partner on the call today, you can ignore that. Probably offends you. We can get into it after this. But we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Jenny. So my name is Jeffrey Huang. I'm the director of Michigan Clean Cities. In the state of Michigan, we're affiliated and hosted within nonprofit Next Energy, based in Detroit. So as the director, I've led our engagement outreach on Drive Electric Michigan, or DEMI here. And my focus today is going to be on priority area number 3, which is utilities, partnership, and engagement. And so we had outreach to a number of different utility partners, but I really wanted to lift up 3 of them who specifically sit on our advisory committee for our statewide program. So the first one is the Lansing Board of Water and Light, based in our capital city of Lansing, and really appreciate Braden, who sits on the advisory committee for us from BWL. So there are municipal-owned utility, again, based in the city of Lansing. Their electric service is approximately for 100,000 customers, and they're just municipal-based, so focused right there in the city of Lansing. Next up is Consumers Energy. They're an IOU that expands across most of the geographic area of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, serving approximately 1.8 million customers across the Lower Peninsula. And then finally, there's DTE, another IOU based around the city of Detroit in Southeast Michigan, covering 2.3 million people. So all of these utilities have been amazing partners. And one of the really great things that we've seen over the past year or so is their commitment to electric vehicles and supporting the adoption and deployment of EVs for residents throughout the state. Something that they have really, stuck with is their commitment to their rebates, especially. BWL has a really great multifamily rebate. Both DTE and consumers have ones for public level 2s and DCFC or DC fast chargers as well. So it's really great to see this commitment and hard work that the utilities have put in to keep electric vehicle engagement and education efforts continuing in the state. We can go to the next slide. So as some of our great partners for DEMI, we also work to actually expand shared campaigns across other priority area audiences that folks on the call today will hear from our other great state-based programs across the country, including other consumers and drivers generally, dealerships across the state, as well as fleets. And I'll point out the two photos on the right there. The top one is with the DTE team. I was at their e-fleet ride and drive, so focused on fleet vehicles in Livonia, Michigan. And they had a bunch of different vehicles there that, again, were like fleet focused. So those, Ford e-Transits and those vehicles that were most, interesting to businesses or companies. And then the bottom right photo with our great partner from Consumers Energy, Casey Loring, who's an EV specialist with them. He is a great, huge fan and advocate driver of EVs. So really interestingly enough, this picture is from an event they had in Battle Creek where they actually had their, let me get the specific vehicle up, their Chevy Silverado EV powering the main stage at the event. So that was a really great anecdote that we got from him and Consumers Energy at that event. So additionally, for all of this outreach, we did it through things like social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, through some of our other partners, as well as newsletter campaigns and outreach for all of our different stakeholders. And specifically for dealerships, we did a lot of direct calls and emails as well. So these are all different stakeholder groups and outreach campaigns that our utilities, we had great partnerships with to keep moving it forward with our statewide program. Next slide, please.
Rivian.
Thank you, Jonathan. And then our metrics from 2025, the first year where we really were able to consistently track these numbers across 5 different partners. We held 9 events across the state with 77 vehicles, over 1,800 rides and or drives, and then over 1,600 community members at these events as well. And I'll also share that they definitely did more than 9 events. These are just the ones that we really felt confident reporting out and tracking, but they're also, stop and touch events as well. And I'll share the best practices for our engagement with utilities. It's really learning as much as possible and knowing our partners, what do they care about, what are their priorities, and then trying to align with those priorities. It's really great for us to provide that support to our partners on their, EV engagement campaigns and goals and outcomes. And it makes them want to work with us even more and know that we're great partners. And then just overall staying engaged and sharing those opportunities because they're always looking for ways to kind of enhance and accelerate their own efforts too. And that's all I've got for Demi. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. We appreciate that. Next up, we have Lisa with Drive Electric Minnesota. Lisa?
Great. Thank you for allowing me to present here. A couple of the opportunity to share our success story with Priority 3 and working with utilities and regulators. I'm Lisa Thurston, Director of Minnesota Clean Cities Coalition, and I work with Drive Electric Minnesota closely while partnering with the Drive Electric USA 2 project. So here in Minnesota, our utilities are regulated by the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission, and there's major investors-owned providers include Xcel Energy for electricity and gas, while municipal and cooperative services are coordinated locally by the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association. So we have, if you want to go to the next slide, you can see the variety of different utilities that we work with. In Minnesota, we've been working with our utilities and cooperatives for nearly 20 years with our work under Clean Cities and Communities. So when joining the Drive Electric USA, we were able to further dive into opportunities to work within the many priority areas over just the utilities. So as Jeffrey mentioned, also the work with utilities actually cross into a few of the other priority areas organically. Here are 3 maps. So the first one shows Xcel Energy in the green, which it is mainly the metro area, as well as some of the surrounding suburb areas and a little bit on the southern side of the state and a little bit up the west side of the state. In the blue is Great River Energy. It's a not-for-profit electric cooperative owned by 27 member cooperatives. And then in the last map here is the Minnesota Rural Electric Association, representing the 50 electric cooperatives. So you can just get a little taste of how many different opportunities we have to work with partnerships with this work. Next slide. So talking about some of the opportunities, programs, and partnerships that Drive Electric USA helped us to further expand on. We had funding, programs, events, and partnerships. Some of the funding included various projects such as an EV car share, which is not directly in line with Drive Electric USA, but it took it to the next step. Supporting further support with fleets, with infrastructure, working with events. Programs were built out with local communities and organizations, which led to both small and large events, as well as some new in-depth partnerships, including supporting community over the community with over 4,000 Minnesota EV owners chapter that we work with. Next slide. So just a quick overview, a couple of great examples of works built out from this project include two very large events with over 100,000 people in attendance each year at each of the events. The Twin Cities Auto Show in the spring is at the Minneapolis Convention Center, where we work with the utilities that we've enabled to do a ride and drive at the event in, I might say, add January, February when it's weather is terrible and the roads are terrible, and we're in downtown Minneapolis. We have really large displays with a dozen vehicles just in the utilities area, such as the electric room or the green room or the electric avenue, it's been called. You can see some pictures on the right-hand side there, as well as the temporary EV charging that both consumers and the ride and drive fleet vehicles have been able to utilize that the utilities bring in. With the Minnesota State Fair, which takes place in late August and is a staple for nearly every Minnesotan, both as a consumer and local and regional businesses. Utility participation is hosting large educational displays as well as vehicles and having light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles in our parade. And then dealership training. So we've realized that a barrier for pushing electric vehicle adoption in Minnesota, both for consumers and fleets, is if the dealers don't know how to work with the utility, the vehicles aren't going to be implemented properly. And then finally, just being out in the communities with hosting ride and drives throughout the state in small and large community events. So that's our project in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We appreciate that. And thank you to both you and Jeffrey for pointing out how important it is for these different priority areas to also work together and not only individually. So appreciate you both highlighting that. Let's see, next up we have Claire presenting for Drive Electric Connecticut. Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. All right, we will be talking about priority area number 4, EVSE planning and mapping, but some Connecticut facts first. We have 3 million people in the state with 73,156 registered EVs, and the Tesla Model Y is the best seller. And then our adoption rates on some of the towns, Westport is 12%, Weston is 11%, and New Canaan is 9%. They're all close together in Fairfield County. So we can go to the next slide. So our first town is Winstead, a rural town. The challenge we found here was that there's no public EV charging infrastructure and no municipal resources dedicated to sustainability. Our approach was we brought together municipal leaders, including the town manager, local businesses, and community stakeholders to identify priority charging locations, explore available funding opportunities, connect potential host sites with funding resources, and build local understanding and support for EV infrastructure. The success here was that the American Museum of Tort Law is moving forward with an EV charging project, which will be installed this September as Winstead's first publicly accessible EV charging station. And we secured a grant to cover 100% of the costs. Originally, we were looking at a rec center and also a recently built plaza, but they fell through, and the Tort Museum was determined to be the best one because it has a large parking lot and it's a community hub, and they also get a lot of tourism there. So the impact that this will have is that it will support residents, visitors, tourism, and downtown businesses while creating momentum for future charging infrastructure throughout the community. And a key takeaway is that in rural communities, progress begins with trusted relationships, visible destinations, and one achievable first project. Spending time with these people and learning their goals is really important. Next slide. So next we have Bridgeport, an urban city, and it's actually the smallest geographic sized city in the state, but it has the largest population, so it's very densely populated. And the challenge here was that the existing public EV chargers are broken or no longer operational. Some have been for quite some time, and the chargers are also not always located where they're most needed, or residents and visitors don't know where existing chargers are located. So our approach here was we partnered with the city's director of sustainability and municipal leaders. We engaged residents, businesses, and community organizations. We convened community meetings focused on EVSE mapping and conducted one-on-one outreach with approximately 20 community members. Some of the larger meetings, we had stakeholders create an interactive map to identify existing chargers, gaps, and priority locations. And those stakeholders identified neighborhoods and high traffic commercial areas where new chargers could provide the greatest benefit. So progress here is that we identified the downtown corridor as a priority location for new charging infrastructure, and we secured a funding opportunity for 2 public EV charging stations through the VoltPost company. And we strengthened partnerships and increased awareness of EVSE opportunities. And then finally, like Winstead, their installation will be going in next month. So it was really great to work with Bridgeport because there was no really community organization looking at the chargers. So by having these conversations and bringing in VoltPost, we got to shine a light on it and motivate the city to make progress on the downtown corridor. Next slide. And then finally, we have Fairfield, a suburban town. They have a lot of chargers compared with the other 2. So our challenge here was to strategically locate new chargers for maximum community benefit. Schools are one area where it's a bit underserved charging wise. So we want to work with the municipality, but we also need to work with Fairfield's existing network charging infrastructure. And our approach was we engaged stakeholders to identify gaps and priority areas for future charging. We partnered with Sustainable Fairfield Task Force and municipal staff. We explored charging opportunities on town-owned properties. We engaged local businesses to identify potential privately owned public charging locations. And we met with Fairfield Public Schools to explore EV charging combined with student engagement and sustainability education. So our progress and outcome here is that we did advance an EVSE project at the high school and got a grant to cover 100% of the costs for 2 level 2 public chargers. There was some pushback from the Facilities Commission because these chargers would be on a different network than their other chargers. And we're still working with our stakeholders, and our stakeholders are approaching the Facilities Commission. So all these dialogues are ongoing, and we look forward to continuing to work with them. And those are our 3.
Thank you so much, Claire. Congrats on all the funding, by the way. That's awesome. Next up, John with Drive Electric Maine.
Hey everybody, John Gagne, Coalition Co-Director for Maine Clean Communities, and also we run the Maine Drive Electric Maine program. I thought Maine had a small population, but now I know Wyoming is way smaller. We've got about 1.4 million people. We are known as the Pine Tree State. If you've ever had lobster, there's a very good chance that it came from Maine. We export between 75 and 100 million pounds of lobster every year. Maine is also the only 1-syllable state, and it is the only state in the country that only borders one state. So some interesting fun facts. And in my opinion, we also have some of the best wild blueberries that I've ever had, and hopefully that you've ever had too. You can go to the next slide. So we are working on priority area 4 on the conducting community charging planning. And we have actually already developed this regional EV charging assessment, and I can drop the link in the chat after the fact. But we developed this plan called Charging the Region, which was a regional EV charging plan involving all of the member communities as part of our host agencies area, which involved at least 25 communities in the greater Portland region. And we had a couple of driving principles for doing this work. We wanted to make it easier and more convenient to drive electric in the region for folks that live, work, or play. We wanted to really do some robust engagement with both residents and municipal leaders. So sort of the grassroots approach, but also from the regulatory side. We wanted to understand what the major barriers for EV adoption across the region were so we could work to address them. And then we also wanted to know where folks really wanted to see EV charging. That's one of the number one questions and hangups for folks is there's funding opportunities available, but where do we put the charging stations? So we wanted you to jump on that process. Go to the next slide. So a lot of this work was really driven by state, local, regional climate targets and goals. So at the statewide level, we have a goal of 150,000 EVs on the road by 2030. The state currently has about 22,000 EVs right now, and we've got about 1,100 level 2 charging ports and almost 500 DC fast charging ports. As a regional planning agency, we have a strategic goal of expanding EV charging access across the region and with our member communities by 2030. And in our long-range transportation plan, we have a goal to reduce emissions by 70%, which of course, a big portion of that comes from on-road transportation emissions. And we wanted to see at least 60% EV adoption across our region. Go to the next slide. Like I said, we wanted to do a lot of community engagement, and so we do this sort of in a two-pronged approach. So like I said, we did a lot of community engagement with the public. So we put out a public survey. We did paid advertisements through LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, really trying to expand our reach. We got over 350 responses from both EV owners and what we called EV curious folks. So we asked them where they want to see more charging, why they drive electric, what some of their barriers are. We attended community events. We attended 5 community events over the span of 8 months. So really doing that face-to-face engagement, asking folks, distributing paper surveys. We did a mapping exercise. And then on the other hand, we wanted to really engage with the folks that are setting the requirements, the regulations, and working with municipal leaders across the region. So we convened a municipal working group, and there were at least 10 municipalities in the region that were active and engaged throughout the whole process. And we were really working with them to define the municipal role in expanding EV charging access. The other part we wanted to do is understand what some of the challenges were with folks that don't own their own homes. So we worked with multifamily housing developers to understand what their biggest challenges and opportunities were for expanding charging access to folks that are renting, which in our urban areas is a very high percentage of our population. All of this was feeding into our regional EV charging assessment, which identified the barriers, charging locations, and strategies for accelerating EV adoption. Go to the next slide.
Rivian.
We asked folks where they want to see charging. So folks dropped a pin across this map. As you can see, we got almost 200 responses on folks either dropping a pin themselves or upvoting a spot. We heard from residents that they want to see charging where they shop, work, or recreate. Charging access is still a barrier for EV adoption. Housing developers cited costs, grid constraints, and low utilization as some of the challenges. And we found that a lot more municipalities had EV charging ordinances than we originally thought. And so we created a really cool opportunity for peer-to-peer sharing to really expand the information and the amount of municipalities that were adopting those levels of ordinances. You can go to the next slide. And so this was the big outcome. So we got this heat map developed with a sort of a list of demographic data, travel demand data, EV charging, all the public input. And we identified where charging should be prioritized across the region. As you can see, it follows a lot of our major routes and interstates along the coastal communities. We had a really good working group with 10 municipalities in the region. And I think some of the really big takeaways from this was we started the regional conversation of EV charging. Communities are looking at this at the local level, but I think where the value comes if one community is installing a bank of DC fast chargers, maybe it doesn't make sense for the community right next door to do the same thing. So sort of sharing and combining resources where possible and really bringing it to a regional standpoint. And the big thing that we learned was members of the public have a lot of thoughts and opinions. And I think it's really valuable to understand where charging makes the most sense from the people who are going to be using it. And so I'll drop a link in the chat for the full charging assessment and more information on all the things we heard through the survey process if folks are interested in learning more.
Thank you, John. Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and blanket answer for everyone. Please put that in the chat. I think we'd all really appreciate that. Next up, we have Antoine with Drive Electric DC.
Yes. Hello.
You're up.
Oh, it hasn't flipped yet. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right. Success stories on educating government officials. So that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on doing. We served as a trusted advisor to local, state, and federal government leaders by providing education, technical support, strategic guidance, to accelerate electric vehicle adoption and charging infrastructure across the metro region of Washington, D.C., and D.C., Maryland, Northern Virginia as well. Some of the highlights for us include lots of meetings with government leaders and agencies. Also, we often comment on legislation as well. In our area, DC and Maryland and Virginia, their state governments are in session the first couple months of the year. And then DC and the local governments are open year round. And of course, we do a fair amount of going up on Capitol Hill. And then we engage with a lot of the congressional offices throughout the year as well. We educate a lot on EV charging and fleet electrification as well. And then, and also we also make sure that we've done demonstration events with elected officials present and have them speak at some of our coffee and conversations, our ride and drives, our showcases, and speak at many of our conferences and events as well. You can go to the next slide. And how we've engaged and educated them on the EV charging technologies. We've had a big fight here on the different fees that they've been adding onto for EV charging as well. Maryland had a big thing last year and this year as well. Fleet electrification, a huge issue for us. Lots of challenges on that, educating elected officials. Also on the grants and incentives as well. We've always educating them on that and working with our entities to help promote their programs so that they're not underutilized as well. We've been able to convene multiple meetings, both at the local level, on the state, and on the federal level as well. And then we've done a lot of peer learning events as well, too. We've also worked with we have a couple chapters in our area, plus the EVADC. So we work very closely with them around education and support as well. And just really quickly on technical assistance, other support, funding guidance, community engagement planning, which is a huge issue. We don't have a charging station in our building, and we're driving them crazy in DC government about that as well. Go to the next slide. Lots of lessons learned, stronger partnerships with government agencies, increased awareness around funding. Maryland, for example, has a rebate program for when you buy a car. It always runs out of money within the first couple months. We're trying to change that as well. DC has a good program, and Virginia do as well, but they all need more money to help transition. Expanded planning for public charging and infrastructure, greater collaboration across all levels of government, and GWRCCC recognized as a trusted technical advisor. We don't pick the charging companies or vehicle folks they should use. We just want to make sure they're reliable, affordable, and sustainable. Lessons learned, build relationships before funding becomes available. It's always a challenge trying to get the facilities, whether they're public, private, or apartment buildings or malls, the facilities people and the charging people and the vehicle people to work together and plan together still is a work in progress. Community education is still a major issue. So many people have myths, lack of understanding. Many people thought once Trump came in office, the administration's changed that there will be no more charging programs or cars available. We know that has not been true. So still a lot of education that's needed with elected officials, both the local, state, and the community sector as well. And that's it.
Rivian.
What was that? Oh, and these are just
You have 30 seconds left.
yes, and so these are just some of the different things. So we met with the last administration, the current administration, local officials, members of Congress. We've gotten a few citations as well for our work. Many of our local and state officials do present proclamations on some of the work that we do at our annual conference as well. And many of them show up for our events. So we're really glad about that. We actually helped get some make-ready legislation passed in Prince George's County, Maryland last year. And so we were happy about that, but we still have a long way to go in terms of our electricity bills are through the roof because of data centers. So that's a hot button issue. in our area, and it's having an impact as well on some of the funding. But we work very well not only with legislators in our region, but across the country as well.
Thank you so much, Antoine. Love the photo collage you guys got going on here.
Yep, lots of electeds, both state, local, federal.
Next up, we have David with Drive EV Oklahoma.
Thank you, Jenny. So hello, everyone. My name is David Frick. I'm the co-director of the Central Oklahoma Clean Cities Coalition. And a little bit about Oklahoma. We are known for being an oil and gas state, having quite a few Native American tribes, and being windy. And all of that is true. I mentioned the wind because despite being an oil and gas state, we are very well positioned for EV adoption. Around 40% of our grid is powered by wind energy, and we have the ninth highest potential for solar energy once the state gets around to developing that. Next slide, please. So our coalition is housed in a council of governments. It's called the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, and that is a photo of the state capitol, and we are just down the road from it. And a council of governments is made up of counties and local cities and towns in central Oklahoma. And they meet regularly to talk about issues and opportunities in our region. So we are very well positioned to have these conversations with elected leaders, which is our priority area. And, we talk with not only, mayors, but also city managers, fleet managers, planners, and because of this grant, we were able to create a Drive Electric EV, Drive Oklahoma Electric Coalition. And we would meet quarterly and talk about EVs in the context of central Oklahoma. Next slide, please. So you see on the left of your screen, those are our major partners. So the first three, Oklahoma City, Norman, Edmond, those are some of the largest cities in Oklahoma, excluding Tulsa, which is not in our region. And so, that's where primarily most of the people live. And having these groups in the room really made a difference. And, the biggest thing with this meeting is we would have a regular cadence. We would invite someone to present. So that could either be a manufacturer, a charging company, technology provider, to showcase something related to electric vehicles. And then our coalition would give updates on legislation and grant opportunities. So of course, we talked about this grant quite a bit. And then the most impactful part of this meeting was the end where we'd go around the room and ask people, what's going on in their communities with EV adoption. So really the groups speaking of their own experiences, learning from each other, was really powerful because, with city governments and county governments, it is a cautious group when it comes to EV adoption because they're using public funds. And taking a risk on a new fuel type can be scary, and so that makes them naturally more hesitant. But when they see the success of other cities and communities, utilizing EVs in their fleets and having good success, that help build some momentum. Next slide, please. So I went over some of this already. That's a photo of a meeting that focused on school buses. So everyone in that picture is either part of the coalition, and there are quite a bit of school bus operators there from around the state. And the presentation focused on a school in Shawnee, Oklahoma, which is in our region. And it's a rural school, and they have 10 electric school buses that was doing a vehicle to grid pilot project. And so that really caught the attention of a lot of people because Oklahoma, unfortunately, has a lot of natural disasters with tornadoes and severe weather. So, power outages are a major issue. And that's something that electrification can help with. And so, as people began to share examples, like I mentioned, adoption of, EVs and electric vehicles and charging, increased. And next slide, I think, has my photo I want to speak on. So yeah, so this in the background is a beam solar charger, and the city of Norman installed it, and they were the first to do it. And one of the stories that we heard from our utility providers was, EVs are great, but installing charging infrastructure is difficult for us. Getting the power to particularly fast chargers is hard. And so the city of
Vivian,
Norman was listening to these stories, and they said, let's avoid this completely and install these independent solar chargers. And granted, they charge a little bit slower, but they decided to make the charging free. So anyone in the public can go charge for free. And if they complain about it being slow, it's free. So hard to beat that. And because they did this, two other communities copied them the next year and installed the exact same chargers. City of Midwest City and Edmond both said that, the reason they did it is because of the success that Norman had. So our big takeaway is that, having peers share examples of their own success is more impactful than what our coalition could say. So our goal was to always encourage good stories, and if there were difficult issues and things and hurdles that people needed to overcome, to be honest about it as well and allow a group to learn from that. So that is all I have for my slides.
Thank you so much, David. Very interesting information about the wind and solar power. I did not know that. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Pete with Electric Mobility South Dakota. Pete?
All right, and just really enjoyed everybody's presentations. And I want to acknowledge, I know John Martinson got off the phone from Drive Electric Arizona, but I want to acknowledge him stressing the importance of tribal nations, which is what we'll be doing today. So the first slide here, as you can see, 12% of South Dakota's land is on tribal reservations. If you could go to the next slide. And just a quick note here, we Native Son and our partner at the time, Sage, have been working on educate. Sorry, that this is the focus on here is educating local and tribal governments here on EVs. And we had already done some work as Native Son Community Power Development and some of our partners in investing about $1.5 million in EV charging and EVs. And of course, that with that comes educating government officials. And we're going to get to this. Tribal nations are government. I don't mean to be say something you guys don't know, but tribal governments are sovereign nations, and that's where some of the power comes into what we have at play here. So we have this history that we're going to get into about what we've done in the state and how we're now transitioning that to go to a higher level through Electric Mobility South Dakota. And I want to give a brief thanks to our predecessors at Drive Electric South Dakota, who helped us with the transition, and of course Jenny and Jonathan for that as well. So next slide. This is our new emblem, and this was designed by Sarah Little Red Feather, Indigenous artist, and she is amazing. And what you're seeing here is the colors of South Dakota flags with Indigenous elements like having horses and lightning bolts in here. And I apologize, I'm a little white guy appropriating here. I would rather have Sarah describe this, but it's really important for us with the communities that we'll be serving in South Dakota and how that's going to bridge to local governments across South Dakota. So next slide. So you're looking at South Dakota here, and you can see just on the map here, we've got 9 tribal governments, and the ones you see in bold there are ones we've put infrastructure in for, and in addition to some that are not in bold, we've done technical assistance, and you can see they spread across the state here, and they have neighbors in between when you're looking at other governments, local, municipal, and county. And I put on the map here that part of what we're doing with Electric Mobility South Dakota, the name may change, by the way, but we're trying to get at the idea of mobility from all the way from an e-bike all the way to a heavy-duty box truck for a government. That there's a diversity of vehicles for a diversity of people. But anyways, with Electric Mobility South Dakota, we are focusing on the power of tribal leadership to move the state, and also bringing into the fold, starting to bridge between those tribal nations and local governments. So here you see Waterton, and we'll get into this a little bit later. One of our chapter members that has a close relationship with them, and that's where we're starting to bridge government to government here. Next slide, please. As I mentioned to you, we've had this investment with Native Son and Sage and with other partners, including Lisa Thurston on the phone here, which was on the Electric Nation team that had the funding in this. And you can see here, this is the, hey, Lisa, this is the Standing Rock transit vehicle. And, you know, Standing Rock is largely in South Dakota, but part goes into North Dakota, and that's where tribal nations kind of bridge across states here. So this is South Dakota focused, but it goes into North Dakota as well. And the only little correction I'll put in here is that we show EVs for Pine Ridge. That is true, but that's not through Native Sun and Sage. That was we have a new partner in Pine Ridge called Red Cloud Renewables, and they brought the EV to Pine Ridge. So just a little correction there. So next slide. There we go. So quick, as a quick overview of the history, and yes, we've been educating government officials, but we all learn. We've had few years of doing this, and there's more offerings now, and there's new ways to approach folks of understand, the various complexities of utilities in South Dakota. But what we're doing going forward with Electric Mobility South Dakota, building on what we've done before here, is having both webinars and static events. We only, through the end of September, we're new, but we're moving quick. And it's not just about doing EVO 101 webinar, but it's for that government, like how this vehicle will operate in extreme cold, how this vehicle will do when you need range in a very remote area or rough and tumble roads where there's no paving. So really, we found that when we do really hyper regional offerings on the capabilities of the EVs and expanding the scope of EVs, it really helps for a departmental official at a tribe, and now with local governments, when they say, "Oh, this is a great idea," and then half a year or a year later, like, "Oh, this is too much of a pain in the butt." So we really want to make sure that we're educating folks, and along those lines, when you see, I've got EV value of governments here.
Rivian.
We've got in another. Is that a Rivian? I heard. No. Okay. We have, like, for example, 3 bands that are providing health services that are getting people to cancer appointments, dialysis, getting people who have vehicles but can't afford the gas because of our current situation, to the grocery store to get food. So really kind of expanding the knowledge from government officials of what they can offer their community. And because there's a lot more offerings on there, we've got folks from Kenworth with medium duty box trucks, transporting buffalo and produce. We've got electric pickup trucks. You see an electric pickup truck and a side-by-side here with one of our chargers. There's a great diversity, and with that, you really want to kind of fine-tune and work with government officials to understand the use case. For example, with the box trucks, where we've got a cooler in there, and it's transporting frozen meat, it's a whole different charging system versus just plugging it in. So we really want to be careful with that. And also with utilities, that's an ongoing situation in South Dakota. We've had situations where people have plugged in once during a month and you've got $1,000 demand charge. And so we're working with utilities to find new ways to do that. Jonathan, I really appreciate your example of what TPA did with all the local power companies of up the kilowatt hour charge but not have demand charge. So we're having some success with boards there. So next slide. So our chapters, we have 4 new chapters that have joined on. Sage is almost there confirmed, but pretty close. And you can see it's spread across the street, and 3 of them are Indigenous led. Native Sun is also Native led as well. And so you've got Pine Ridge to the west, Kawakasha, Wapasi in the center, Sage in the north, and Dakota Cornerstone, which is run by a gentleman that works with tribal nations, but also throughout from local state municipals and the state government, with non-tribal governments in Watertown. So we really have a good spread here, and each of these are involved with working with government officials and know the department heads, and so it's a really good setup for us here. Next slide. Or is that the last slide? Because I have few more notes here. Oh,
that was your last one.
Not in Montana yet.
I do unfortunately have to wrap you up on time. The review
Okay.
you heard was your cue for 30 seconds. So
yeah,
I'm
okay.
so sorry,
Just
Pete.
very quickly, all to say that doing this ground up thing can move the needle in the state that's been a bit slow in this area, and we're really looking forward to working with you guys on the phone too.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Jenny.
Pete.
Sorry for going over.
No, you're good. We appreciate all the work that you and Rhonda have done in the short time span that you've been given, and we continue to look forward to what's coming next with you all. So next up, we have Jesse with Drive Electric Montana.
Hello, everybody. Hey, my name is Jesse Terrian. I'm a project manager in Montana with Yellowstone, Teton Clean Cities, and we're also an apprentice coalition, Montana Clean Cities Apprentice Coalition. I just dropped a link in the chat if anybody wants to check out what I'll be showing. So our state, John's bragging how big his state is. We're only 1.2 million, not quite that big, but we are the fourth largest state in the country. Our largest city is Billings with 120,000 people, and I live in the fourth biggest city with 60,000 people in Bozeman. So I'm going to be touching on, next slide, priority area 6, which is the preferred EV dealership program. So we developed, well, actually, Kaylee Smith, our program associate here, she developed a training program, and it's actually just, if you click that link, you can see it. It is a PowerPoint presentation, and we've seen some trainings that were able to function that way. So it was a learning experience for all of us to learn how you can use PowerPoint to do a training like this. So it was developed to try and inform and educate sales reps across our state about EVs. As probably the case in many states, the people buying the electric vehicles know more about them than the salespeople selling them. And in many cases, the sales reps don't know anything about EVs. And in fact, they actually know a lot of wrong information that they then share to potential buyers. I know this firsthand because I've had friends looking to buy a Silverado, and he went there and they pretty much convinced him he shouldn't buy a Silverado. He ended up buying it with a different dealer, in fact, or a different sales rep, in fact, one that we trained through this program. So next slide. To give you an idea of maybe why people aren't up to speed on EVs, you can see this is the number of registered EVs in Montana. The solid line is from the AFDC and the dotted line is from Atlas EV Hub. Atlas EV Hub fine tunes the data that our DOT sends in because oftentimes there are misidentified EVs. Some vehicles are not identified as, or are identified as EVs and they're not. So I think the state has gotten better in the last year with that, but you can see, I think we're probably close to 6,000 EVs maybe this year in battery electric. No, I guess it would be EVs, plug-in and battery electric EVs maybe around this year. Next slide. So another way to look at it is as a percentage of total EV registrations, and I have Montana's data in the solid lines, and the dotted line is the US data. So we're probably approaching 1% battery electric EVs this year. It's continued to increase, but this illustrates that we're not a large percentage of registered EVs, but it is increasing. Next slide. So this is the training, and if you click that link in the chat, you just click that preferred dealer training image there, and that takes you to a PowerPoint presentation. And once you complete that, it maybe takes 45 minutes. A lot of just generic information. What's the difference between a plug-in and a non-plug-in? What's some of the battery chemistries? We tried to address a lot of the misconceptions in there that they do work in the winter. We explained a little bit about different heating systems, whether it's resistive heating or heat pumps. And I looked it over the other day, and I noticed some of it's a little bit dated now because it had the EV rebate in there. So we need to adjust this. But once they take this course, they can take the quiz, and it's a short 10, 20 question quiz, and it's just a Google Forms, I think. And then once they pass that, which is pretty easy to do, we list them on our page. And this is the example below. You can see all the different dealership salespeople that have taken the course and passed it. And there's a link to contact them directly. And I know at least we have maybe 3 or 4 EVs that have been sold through people we have trained. Next slide. These are the locations that currently have had at least one sales rep take the training. It was pretty hard initially, and it continues to be hard. We don't spend a lot of time pushing it, but we always mention it. We have, I guess I should have, we have little handout cards with a QR code that would link it to the training. And we've been to many, many dozens of dealerships to try and have them take it. The one in Missoula there, the Volkswagen on the left, I think we ended up paying him $100 to take the training. We've offered many sales reps $100 to take it, and only one took us up on that offer. So it's pretty difficult, but I think people are more receptive now, and you can see it's primarily Western Montana, but it's quite a geographically expansive area. I think that's it. Next slide, if there is one. Yeah, I think that was it.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And I know you put the link in the chat. Thank you for that. I highly recommend everyone flipping through that if you get a chance. I have done it a few times now, and it's incredible. Shout out to Kaylee for putting all that together. Next up, we have Carl with Go EVIN.
Well, welcome everyone. I wanted to give a special shout out to Jenny and Jonathan for their leadership on this project. I think all of us that are presenting today would say the same thing. It's been a very wonderful project for Drive Clean Indiana and for all of us. So I'd also ask you to keep your thoughts with people from the Midwest. We encountered EF2 tornado, and that's why you don't see my mug on this calling on my cell phone. But the project I'm going to describe here, the deployment, we just got some great news today right before the call, and I'll share that with you. So a little bit about the Hoosier State. What is a Hoosier? People always ask me, what's a Hoosier? Well, a Hoosier is an Indiana person, an Indiana citizen. Some of the things that you're probably not aware of, I was not aware of this, but more than half of Indiana's border is surrounded by water, which is being in a Midwestern state is something. And then I also want to welcome you to soon to be Chicago Bears. So more to come on that. So next slide, please. So again, part of what we're going to be talking about EV deployments in fleets. And one project that I just really wanted to highlight, which was a great project, was working with Gary Public Transit, located in Gary, Indiana. So the Go EV Indiana project really helped with a variety of partnerships. That was working with the Volkswagen Committee, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Department of Transportation, Indiana Office of Energy. So it was a variety of wonderful organizations, utilities, and the Gary Public Transit, ChargePoint, and our MPOs. So one of the things that we had encountered working with Gary Public Transit was they didn't know much about electric. And so working with our Go EV Indiana brand allowed us to do a lot of public education, but then it also helped us deploy for electric transit buses. So Gary Public Transit, they do public transportation for 11 communities, covers about 175 square miles. So a lot of things that they were working on were opportunities just to consider all the alternative fuels. And they actually, through fleet audits and things like that we worked on, we determined that electric really was the way to go. It really turned out to be a fantastic project for us. So a lot of educational events, as you can see on our brand. But the biggest thing that we did through this was working with all the state utilities. So combining all the utilities, we could agree on what we could. And so this allowed us through Volkswagen settlement to have about $3.3 million available for deployments. Next slide, Jenny. So Gary Public Transit, you can just see these are some of the things that we had worked on with them. But I think one of the biggest things that we saw was this was workforce development. Things that we had to overcome with Gary Public Transit was the lifts actually could not lift the electric buses. And those are all some of the learning experiences. But I would just tell you is that the benefits certainly outweighed all the negatives. And I think what we found was Gary has become the statewide coalition or through Go EV Indiana, being the educator to others. Next slide, please. So again, this was just a highlight of some of the state, the mayor of Gary, and some of the state representatives on some of the implementation of the Gary public transit. But I would just tell you is that some of the things that we've been involved with on deployments have over 100 electric school buses throughout the state through this initiative. We've got another project through Northwest Indiana through a metropolitan planning organizations who's deploying 80 light duty vehicles. So one thing I did want to bring back as we talk about Gary, as I just mentioned, keeping thoughts for some of the residents. Well, Gary's located in Northwest Indiana, suburb of Chicago, if you will. One of the things we talk about resiliency all the time. Well, guess what happened? And I just found out about this today. So the bus depot where they store these electric buses had a backup generator. The fuel depot that they use was not supported, so their diesel pumps were not supported, or gasoline pumps were not supported by this backup generator. Well, guess what happened? All the buses ran out of fuel, the diesel buses and gasoline buses, and guess what ran? The electric buses. So one of the things that we did get a call from the mayor thanking us from the deployment of these transit buses, and I think what you'll start to see is more involvement throughout the state of Indiana with additional deployments of electric transit buses. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Carl, for your presentation and your kind words. And we all hope that you and your family and everyone in the general area continues to recover from the severe weather that you all have had recently.
Thank you.
Next up, and to bring us on home, we have Barry with Mission Electric.
Good afternoon, everyone. Stay safe, Carl. I'm Barry Carr, Director of Clean Communities of Central New York. And I want to thank everybody from the Drive Electric USA 1 and USA 2 team, including Jonathan and Jenny, and also acknowledge Veronica Kaysen, who I believe is on this call, who is the program manager on this project. I appreciate you, Jonathan and Jenny, for putting slide 1 together here, because I learned a little bit about New York myself. We are in Syracuse, right in the middle of the state. You can see that most of upstate New York is pretty rural. We have deer, but you see places like Binghamton and Utica and Messina way up in the North Country. Those are all parts of our territory. Some of you may not know, obviously we have a large population in New York. We have a large area. We have 6 Clean Cities coalitions here in New York State, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, New York City, and Long Island. And I'm here to talk about fleets and what we learned in the Drive Electric USA 2 project. We did this as Mission Electric, and next slide, please. I've been doing this for a long, long time. I think somewhere around 25 years as a leader of the coalition, and somewhere around 35 years as someone who has dealt with municipal and private fleets their whole career. We do it as a team. So thanks out to Empire Clean Cities, which hosts our Mission Electric website. I believe, Angel, you're on the call as well. So thanks to you. Thanks to Zanisha Graham, who has always kept the website up to date. And even a belated thanks to Christina Ficicchia, who initially dreamed up Mission Electric. So we've been out doing events as Mission Electric now for, I think, a little over 3 years. But anyhow, our partners allowed us to participate with a number of different fleets, both in New York City and then here in upstate New York with the city of Ithaca. We dealt with some very small fleets. Those would be the villages of Pulaski, which is up on Lake Ontario, has a fleet of 4 vehicles. 3 of them are electric now. City of Ithaca, which is the home of Cornell University and Ithaca College. That's what I would call a medium-sized city. It's about 80,000 people. And then our transit agencies, which includes TCAT, which is the Tompkins County Transit Authority. That is where Ithaca is. And then Centro, which is our transit agency here in Syracuse, New York. And I also want to acknowledge the importance of dealing in fleets with your utilities. So in upstate New York, where I am, we deal with Avangrid, which is a large Spanish-owned utility. It includes a group called New York State Electric and Gas, headquartered in Binghamton, New York, and also Rochester Gas and Electric. And then we have National Grid, which is a utility based in Great Britain, but they operate the former Niagara Mohawk Power Corporation and also Keyspan electric utility out on Long Island. So it truly does take a village. The importance of working with your utility is you will all hopefully find out that your utilities have fleet departments. So in our case, National Grid that we work very closely with, there's a man named Ryan Wheeler, and Ryan heads up the fleet assessment group there. In New York State, we are very fortunate to have access to a lot of in-state incentives through our state energy office called NYSERDA. NYSERDA offers grant programs, and in order to qualify for the grant program, you do a fleet assessment. And in our case, the fleet assessments are assisted by the local Clean Cities and Communities organization. And then if you are going after what we call make ready funds,
Rivian.
and I can share more of this with you later on, but make ready funds are where your utility will pay anywhere from 50% up to 100% of the upgrade cost. That again requires an assessment as well that includes the Clean Cities. Next slide, please. Outcomes, best practices, lesson learned. The funding allowed us and the Mission Electric team to do additional outreach and educational events. Those events, while they're primarily aimed at consumers, guess what? Those consumers work for municipalities at both public and private fleets, so they were able to participate and get information that way. It's real important to work closely with your local utility. The number one thing I can tell any of you if you're thinking of doing an electric vehicle project is call your utility first and call them often. Third thing is collaboration is key. We worked as a team, which allowed us to cover the entire state, but we also utilized some of our other coalitions and our friends here in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states to learn more. We often support each other's projects. And then finally, the thing we learned, which isn't always good, this is more of a challenge. The landscape is changing very quickly. EV manufacturers have gone out of business. Some of the models are no longer available. However, when they drop one, another company pops up and a new model becomes available. And then the same thing with the EVSE. A lot of charger companies have collapsed, but there's a lot of new ones still out there. So continue to collaborate, and thank you again for allowing us to participate in this project.
Thank you so much, Barry.
You're welcome.
Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar for today. Thank you so much to all of our states for your presentations, your participation in this project. I, for one, have thoroughly enjoyed this journey, I'll call it, and appreciate you all just doing all the work that you have done in your states. Jonathan, do you have anything else to bring us home? I don't know if there are questions. I have not been looking at the chat, or if anybody has questions they want to ask.
There've been a few notes that people have responded to one another, I think. So yeah, no, good job, everybody. We appreciate it. Nice work highlighting examples of what's going on in your state. So we appreciate it. And unless there are any final questions, we are done.
Thanks,
See you
all.
all in Kansas City.
See you in Kansas City.